Welcome back, everybody. We've got a mountain of NBA game summaries to get through today.
Sounds like someone's eager for a deep dive into all the action.
Well, our listeners always keep us busy. But that's what we're here for, right? To break down the highlights, the upsets, maybe even uncover some hidden gems along the way.
Definitely. Because a box score only tells part of the story. There's always a deeper layer of strategy and decision-making to unravel.
Exactly. So, shall we dive right in? Let's start with Phoenix taking down Atlanta 123-115. Got to talk about Devin Booker. He was incredible.
Oh, Devin Booker was in full effect last night. But what impressed me wasn't just the sheer number of points, but how Phoenix orchestrated everything around him.
Oh, you mean it wasn't just Booker going rogue, chucking up shots?
Not at all. They were running him off screens, creating open looks, really taking advantage of his efficiency. Atlanta's defense just couldn't keep up.
So it was a calculated team effort, not just individual brilliance.
Interesting. Well, while we're on the subject of high-scoring games, how about Houston's upset over Memphis, 119-115? Jalen Green's dunks? Wow.
Talk about highlight reel material. Those were something else. But honestly, what stood out to me was Houston's energy in the final minutes. They were down for most of the game, but they never gave up.
Yeah, I saw that. They were forcing turnovers, grabbing offensive boards, just out-hustling Memphis down the stretch.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that sometimes sheer grit can trump raw talent, especially late in the game. Memphis just couldn't match that intensity.
Even with Ja Morant doing his usual electrifying thing.
Yeah, even with Ja's explosiveness, Houston's small ball lineup really seemed to disrupt their rhythm, too. Quicker on their feet, just outworking them.
Interesting. Makes you wonder if Memphis underestimated them a bit, thought they could coast on talent alone. Okay, let's switch gears now. Miami pulled out a close one against Utah, 97-92. Talk about a grinded-out game.
Oh, that was a masterclass in clutch play, especially from Jimmy Butler, Mr. Clutch himself. What was it about his game that impressed you?
Well, his shot selection was incredibly smart, not forcing anything. He waited for the right moments, drew fouls, got to the free throw line, controlled the whole tempo in those final minutes.
And Utah had Lauri Markkanen trying to stage a comeback, but it just wasn't enough.
Markkanen had some good looks, but Miami's defense was suffocating. Bam Adebayo really deserves some credit, too. His presence in the paint was immense, altering shots, shutting down driving lanes. Utah just didn't have an answer for him.
Speaking of tough matchups, Dallas barely squeaked past Portland, 117-111. Luka magic strikes again, I presume.
Luka Dončić was unbelievable, no doubt about it. 38 points, 11 assists, 9 rebounds, almost triple-double.
Seriously, is there anything this guy can't do?
But even beyond the stats, it was his passing that stood out to me last night, finding teammates in the tightest spots, just incredible vision.
And Portland put up a fight, didn't they?
They did, yeah. Jeremy Grant had a great scoring night. But ultimately, Luka's playmaking was the difference maker. Controlled the pace, created so many scoring opportunities.
Makes sense. All right, let's talk about a game that wasn't quite so close. Minnesota blew out Orlando 104-89. Anthony Edwards was on fire.
Ant-Man was simply unstoppable last night, driving to the basket with ease, hitting his jumpers, even dishing out a few assists.
So what was the key to him having such a dominant game?
Well, Orlando just couldn't match up with his athleticism. They tried different defenders, but nothing worked. Plus, Minnesota did a great job spacing the floor, giving him room to operate.
Ouch. I bet Paolo Banchero is going to be studying that game tape pretty closely.
Oh, I'm sure he is. He had a rough night against Minnesota's physicality. They made him work for every basket.
So even in a blowout like that, there are lessons to be learned. It's fascinating how each of these games reveals something new about these teams and players.
Absolutely. And we've only just scratched the surface. As we dig deeper, we'll uncover even more insights into what makes these teams tick.
It's funny. Those glowouts we were just talking about, they're not as exciting for fans, right?
True, but they serve a totally different purpose.
How so?
Well, think about it. They're a chance for teams to really fine-tune things, experiment with lineups, give the bench some minutes.
Yeah, work on stuff that might be too risky in a close game.
Exactly. Lower pressure environment. You can try out new plays, give younger guys a shot.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And for someone like Anthony Edwards, it's got to be a confidence booster just to let loose and dominate like that.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about development sometimes.
Oh.
So even if they're not edge-of-your-seat thrillers, blowouts have their place in the big picture.
Right. So speaking of the big picture, any overall trends jumping out at you from these games?
One thing I've noticed is the rise of young talent. We talked about Jalen Green, but you've got guys like Şengün in Houston, Edwards obviously in Minnesota, even Lauri Markkanen putting up a fight for Utah.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to see this next generation of players making their mark. Does this shift in talent affect the playoff picture at all?
It definitely adds another layer of intrigue, especially in the West. It feels wide open this year.
Because you got the usual suspects like Phoenix, Memphis, but then teams like Houston or even Oklahoma City are showing they can hang with the best. Makes it way more unpredictable.
Exactly. And then in the East, you've got Boston, Milwaukee, Miami, all battling for that top spot.
So many contenders.
It's going to be a tight race. Boston's depth is scary. Milwaukee with Giannis is always a threat. And you can never count out a team with Jimmy Butler's clutch gene.
It's true.
Yeah.
Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, though, any early thoughts on individual awards, MVP, Rookie of the Year?
Well, it's early, but Luka's got to be the MVP frontrunner right now. The numbers he's putting up leading Dallas to wins.
And he makes it look so effortless.
He's just a joy to watch. As for Rookie of the Year, Banchero's still the favorite, but guys like Green Mathurin, they're making things interesting.
It's always amazing to see how rookies adapt to the NBA so quickly.
It really is. Speaks to the level of talent coming into the league these days.
Okay, before we go full-on awards predictions, let's zoom out a bit. We've talked individual performances, team dynamics, but how does all of this fit into the larger story of the NBA season?
Think of these games like chapters in a much bigger book. They give us glimpses into the personalities, the rivalries, the storylines that are shaping this season.
Each game is significant on its own, but also part of a larger narrative.
Exactly. And as the season goes on, these individual stories will start to intersect, creating an even richer, more complex story.
Like a tapestry being woven thread by thread.
Perfect analogy. Each game adds another layer of detail. By the end, we'll have this intricate masterpiece.
Love that. So what should we be looking out for as we move forward? What threads will shape the final tapestry?
Well, injuries always play a huge role. A key injury can derail a team's entire season.
Like Steph going down last year completely changed things for Golden State.
Exactly. And then there's the trade deadline, always a chance for some major shakeups.
Those mid-season trades always throw a wrench on things.
Right. And of course, you can't forget the coaching factor. We already saw how a strategic adjustment like Houston's small ball lineup can completely change a game.
So we're not just watching the players, we're watching the coaches too.
Absolutely. It's a chess match out there. So as we follow these games, let's pay attention to those subtle but crucial factors that will ultimately determine the champion.
Feels like we're detectives piecing together clues to solve the mystery.
And the best part, we get to enjoy the ride along the way.
Speaking of the ride, I'm already itching to dive into the next set of games.
Me too. The NBA never fails to deliver the drama.
Well said. All right, folks, we've covered a lot of ground today. From individual brilliance to team dynamics, from playoff implications to the overall narrative of the season.
He even got a little philosophical there for a second.
Hey, I always say the NBA is more than just a sport. It's a reflection of life itself.
Couldn't agree more.
But before we spiral into an existential crisis, let's bring it back to our listener. What's the key takeaway from today's deep dive?
I'd say it's this. Don't just look at the scores. Look deeper. Pay attention to the narratives, the individual battles, the coaching decisions. That's how you'll truly understand this game.
It's about appreciating the nuances, the connections, the stories that unfold on the court, big and small.
Exactly. Those stories are what make the NBA such a captivating and rewarding experience.
Oh, well said. We're going to take a quick break right now, but we'll be back in a few minutes to wrap things up. All right, we're back, wrapping up our NBA deep dive for today.
Yeah, so many great games. Hard to choose a favorite.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Before we go, I'm just curious, from all these summaries, is there like one big takeaway, one theme that kind of defines where the NBA is at right now?
You know what strikes me? The parity. Like anyone can win on any given night. We saw some expected outcomes, sure, but also some real surprises.
Like that Houston win over Memphis.
Yeah.
Definitely turned some heads.
Right. And it shows how deep the talent pool is across the league. Any team can step up and challenge the top dogs.
The playoff races are going to be wild this year.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just about stacking superstars anymore. It's about team chemistry, belief, coaching. Strategies are more important than ever.
Yeah, Houston's small ball really threw Memphis off their game. Makes you think, are the days of just relying on a single superstar fading away?
Maybe. I mean, superstars still matter, obviously. But we are seeing a shift towards a more team-oriented game. Role players are stepping up. Coaches are making smarter adjustments. It's making the league more competitive than ever.
So it's not just about who has the best players, it's about how you use them. That's got to be more exciting for fans, right? More unpredictable.
Totally. Every game has the potential for an upset, a clutch performance, a coaching masterclass. You just never know what's going to happen.
And that's the beauty of the NBA.
Yeah.
All right, before we let everyone go, what's that one thing you want our listeners to remember?
Don't just look at the scores. Dive deeper. Pay attention to the little things, the matchups, the coaching decisions. Those are the keys to really understanding the game.
It's about seeing the whole picture, not just the surface.
Exactly. And remember, it's a long season, lots can happen, so buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Huge thanks to our listeners for sending in those game summaries. It was a blast breaking them down with you.
Keep those summaries coming, folks.
And keep that basketball passion burning. We'll be back soon with more deep dives into the NBA. Until then, keep watching and keep learning.